Stop sitting. Did you show up today? I'm supposed to speak. Hey, good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee of the Anchorage Assembly to order. It is 9 a.m. Thursday, January 9th, 2025. Good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. We'll start off with member introductions. My name is George Martinez.
Scott Myers. Zach Johnson.
Are there any members on the phone?
Randy Solt.
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Karen Gronda.
Karen, thank you. Karen? Right on. If any other members join us, please just announce yourself or text me, especially to get into the queue. We'll start off with our regular reports, and I don't think there's much reporting at this point versus as we start into the new year, but just to give everybody an opportunity. And I also heard from Lance, who's not going to be with us today. So OEDC, our Building Development Services or Planning Department. Any updates for us?
Excuse me. Great Lake Development Services. We were asked to give an update on the third-party plan review and how that's going since past April. So we have a couple updates for you. On the commercial side of things, we have had exactly 9 commercial permits come in using the third-party plan review option. Of those, one of those have been audited. It was issued a pass. There were a few comments, but nothing like safety related. Of those 9, 3 of those were only third-party option. We only included structural plan review essentially. So there's still the other disciplines that not opt for the third-party review. So there's still, I believe, 6 of those waiting for full issuance. 3 have been issued. On the residential side of things, you had, oh, I should mention, those 9 were approximately 710 commercial permit applications. That excludes elevators and demolitions. So of 700 permits, we've had 9 come in using that third-party plan review, and 3 have been issued. On the residential side of things, we've had about 724 residential permits. This excludes re-roofs and demolitions. And that's been between April 1st and December 31st. Let's see. We are a little behind on the audits on those because we've been pretty low staff. So we've been really just trying to keep up with the permits. But we have audited we're supposed to audit 10%. Audited 5% at this point. The ones we did audit were passed, so that's good. And let's see. Yeah. So it looks like we are having quite a few people, that residential third-party plan review has been for quite a while now. People are getting pretty used to taking advantage. 147 reviews out of 724 permits were done with.
Say that again.
147 out of the 724 were done with third party. Commercial is a little slower, 9 out of 700. One. So we will be generating a report summarizing all this stuff in October of 2025. It's going to go when we have a full year's worth of data.
Just for the record, Member Brawley has joined us in person. Member Bronca has joined us in person as well. Thank you for being here. And do we have any questions about the information that was presented? Yes, Member Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. And I have requested this, so thanks for the update.
Sure.
And I know that there is a report due later in October. So if I remember correctly, that ordinance passed sometime in January of last year. I was just wondering when the commercial third-party review actually started, because I know there was some setup time.
So, yeah, we had to get the qualified reviewers. Right now, as of today, we have 14 qualified, folks who have qualified for the third-party plan review, and I believe this data is from April 1st to December.
All right, thank you.
Some other updates, we've also finished up our insurance service organizations, the ISO audits. So that information has been given to the ISO and we're still getting our rating, how that comes back. Hopefully, we will not be taking any sort of hit on our rating because of the third-party commercial plan review. I don't think that even really came up in the questions actually this time. Did not mention that. And then, see, we have a date on the ICC valuation tables. There was some concern that the new valuations that go into place in January would drastically increase our permit fees. We looked at the tables compared to last year's tables. There are some increases. There's also quite a few decreases. Most of the increases are on the order of 1.5%, some even less than that. So we don't anticipate any dramatic increases in permit fees this year. See, Daniel, thanks for coming. Was there anything else you want to talk about? Development services?
Yeah, we got our code.
Please, announce yourself, come on closer so that folks online, thank you. Thank you.
Daniel King, Engineering Services Manager for the Building Department. Yeah, code updates are going. This is our first official week actually starting the reviews. I was just at the structural code meeting yesterday and it went really well. We have a couple of updates that I think will be really helpful to the community. Once we have them finalized, we'll be able to send you guys some updates on where they're at. But yeah, they're going to be going on every week or every other week depending on the committee. And we have 9 committees for the different code sections, and we're just starting next week our administrative code review for the admin code section, 23 minutes. So, yeah, go on.
Thank you.
Member Brawley, did you also requested an update on the VNAs?
That wasn't me, but that would be great.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, right.
Campbell's here for that. You don't mind, please?
Scott Campbell, Chief Inspector. VNAs, what do you guys want to know about
Any updates you have for us?
them? We have
Numbers are good too.
approximately, I believe, 179 currently registered. We have approximately another 100 that we identified last year for our inspections group. And in the next 2 months, we're going to go about trying to get those 100 or so plus properties registered. We do expect more to become available when we do this. So you expect those numbers to increase quite a bit this fiscal year. So we're going to keep hammering. Follow-up meetings with the ACDA this next coming week to discuss options on how to mitigate some of these structures.
Do we have any numbers on, do we have any numbers on the disposition of any of the properties that are currently on the list? Like what happened to them? I know there are some anecdotal stories that I know of some of the properties that were torn down or some other stuff, but do we have any numbers
Yeah, so
of actions?
last year we took down 9 structures with our ARPA funds, which were the $500,000 that we received from the assembly. We did clear those properties. They're now with the utilities on the plot edge, so they're a very viable building plot. We did, of course, take down a nuisance property for Pine in September. Tax deductively donated to the nonprofit, and we're looking to work with other property owners across town to maybe mitigate some of these structures.
Any questions? Right on, thank you, Scott. Right on.
That's it from Development Services, unless there's any questions.
No, don't see any. Thank you, sir. We'll move on to public.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Is that Constant?
Yeah,
Right on.
so, since Development Services is here and it's Scott Campbell, who's, part of code enforcement in the team with Johnson Nelson, I think if it's okay with you, now might be a time briefly to talk about that licensing action.
With the Canabasca?
Yeah, and just very briefly, not to get substantively into the question, but to talk about procedures. It seems like this is a good time since you're at the table.
Yeah, so this was probably a question that would be better directed towards land use and John Snelson, who is the lead for land use. They're the ones that are,
So
have
I'm not really interested in tackling the substance today. It's more procedural to the chair.
Okay, so I am taking a cue from the chair of the assembly to myself as the chair of this committee that to remind folks, I'm just going to do my reminding part. The assembly moved to postpone action on this item and refer the cannabis to CEDC. Our agenda has been published and it's not on our agenda today. So the intention is to have this item on our agenda for our next meeting, February 6th, which means I would be requesting from members that we postpone any actions on this from the January 21st meeting to be able to take this up at the subsequent meeting. So that's my part of the script. Right on. If you want any other substantive updates, Chair, then make sure you flag them for me now.
Nothing substantive. It's strictly procedural. I wanted members to understand and the petitioner, if they're listening, to notice that we've discussed it here. The plan is to hear it at the next meeting because of agenda issues and publication, and that necessitates a little bit of a further timeline for the action. Just reiterating what you just said. So it's all
Thank you.
procedural, not specific. Now we can check that box. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Constant. Member Brown?
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. Excellent. Planning.
Good morning, Lisa Babb, Planning Department. I'll just give some highlights from our division. Starting with the Long Range Planning Division, the first thing I wanted to introduce this morning was talk about the AO 2025-6, an ordinance designating the Alaska Native Heritage Center as the local landmark register. I believe it's the first property that's been nominated. So we're pretty excited about that. Long Range Planning is here also to present on the Manufactured Homes Communities Report. And then Zoning and Land Use Review has issued their fourth quarter report, which I can share with the Assembly if you would like me to. It looks like we are processing reviews for initial reviews for residential permits on an average of 1 to 2 days, and initial reviews for commercial permits on an average of, I'd say, about 3 to 8 days. And they are also, they just started a project to data mine the non-conforming rights determinations reports that we have, so that'll be an interesting bring to this body, if that's all right with you. And then, current planning is working on the Berkeley Comprehensive Plan. Title 21 team just completed a rough draft of the site access code revision. So we are in the process of sending that to PZB, and you should be seeing those draft revisions soon. We are also working on the special limitations mapping project. We have gotten pretty far with all of that, and you should be seeing more special limitations information popping up on the zoning map pretty soon as well. And then, as you all know, the B3 AO Tuesday, the assembly. And then in AMAX, they've had a technical advisory meeting this last week. And the main topics of discussion at that meeting were the Safer Service Highway, the NPO agreement and boundaries, and they had just kickstarted their climate action plan. And for the department as a whole, we're also kicking off a website update. There's a lot of old information on our website, so we're going to be updating the website, and then we also have several vacancies to fill. So if you know of any good planners in town, please send them our way.
Member Brawley has a question, but just first to announce that Member Boland has joined us.
So I see there's another item that was on our agenda, but got postponed, or it'll bump to later, it was just introduced on Tuesday, and that's the one AO 2025-3. So I know we're talking about that one later, but I want to ask a separate question, not the content of that. Basically, that one, all of the paperwork from it is from 2019, with your planning and zoning, et cetera. So setting aside that one, I'm curious, just is that an outlier? Because it seems unusual to me for something to have sat since 2019 and finally get to the assembly in 2025. So I'm wondering, is this an isolated case, or is there another set of things that we should expect, or do you have any insight on that? And again, separate from the content of that ordinance.
I think that I'm not sure what exactly happened with that ordinance specifically, but I think that you may be seeing a few more items like that come through, just things that staff have had on the desk for a while that they're excited about and have come to me with, and I am going through some of those things, and you may see. Are you interested in the specifics of why that one in particular sat for you?
I mean, I'm curious, but I think since we do have it on the agenda, we could tackle.
Thank you. Right on. Excellent. Thank you for being with us. Public Works, do we have any updates from maintenance operations, management and engineering, or traffic? I didn't think I saw it. So, right on. Excellent. We'll continue to move on that. Any updates from real estate department? Right on. I do have one update from that vantage point from before we even get to the ACDA. Just a note that previously at this assembly, at this committee, we had ASD here talking about their real estate portfolio, essentially, and one of the properties that we were particularly focused on was the property at the Totem and Muldoon area. And just to note that at the December school board meeting, amendment was introduced and unanimously accepted for the ASD right sizing memorandum 73 that was passed unanimously as well, which included the language of the school district essentially requesting that the municipality receive the property and get it out of their portfolio so that it can be activated for housing and other development. So the language is already on the school board's website because it's available through their information website like ours. But I have it and I'll make it available through this committee and we'll publish it on our website as well. So we see the whole memorandum with the amendments. And I want to just make sure that real estate knows that. We had heard that there had been some interest across the years of that property, and there had not been very much opportunity to explore that interest because of that relationship with the school district. That's exciting to us in East Anchorage. I know, Karen, that's exciting to us. So just to make sure we flag that has happened, and Member Jacobs introduced that amendment, and it was unanimously accepted. To updates from Anchorage Community Development Authority, and Happy New Year, and any updates you have for us.
We raise our hand for this.
Hey.
So thank you, Mike Robbins, Executive Director of ACDA. Just three quick updates. We are moving to close on the firing lots that we picked up last year. With the Assembly's approval. We have scheduled to be on the March agenda for the HLBC committee concerning the 30 Ingra project and the RV resort. And then we have a meeting. We did get some bad news about grants. We did not get our EDA grant that we applied for to complete our planning for the Arnie Vacant Abandoned Property Program. So we're regrouping next week at ACDA. We have a meeting with AWU and planning, and we're doing an interdepartmental meeting with everybody that's involved in that project, brainstorming too. figure out how to move forward, maybe on a smaller scale, but keep it moving forward. So that's about it.
Right on, thank you. Any questions? Yeah, member, Brown?
I don't know if it's on the same line here, but I'm wondering what's happening with the Warrens off Center West. Can anyone give me an update on that? I know there was a email that went out wondering if people had uses for the property, the ideas for it, and wondering where that is in the process.
This is a question directed to,
Whoever could answer it.
Real estate.
Probably real estate. Yeah.
so I know our real estate director's not here, but if anyone from real estate wants to answer that, or otherwise that may be just an offline question to follow up with. It appears to be an offline question. to
Okay.
follow up.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you, Karen. Cool. Thank you, ACDA, for the update, and we'll move on to unfinished business. And our first item here is a presentation from the administration's policy director, Nolan Clowder. So I hope that you are on the owl with us. And the agenda item is the review and expanding of the housing development tax incentives. This is essentially looking at 12.70, the market rate housing tax incentives, and 12.60 and 12.70, which is the affordable housing tax credits that we have, tax incentives that we have. Turn the floor over to Nolan for a presentation. The documents are available also on the website for folks, members of the public to review what Mr. Clowder's presentation has. Nolan, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair Martinez. For the record, Nolan Clowder, I'm the policy director in the mayor's office, and I previously presented to this group, to the Community Economic Development Committee in November about our proposed changes to 1260, which is the property tax abatement for multifamily. And so by way of reminder, this is a property tax abatement bill to encourage multifamily construction and throughout the city. And so we have now some draft language for an AO that I've shared with the committee. We have a few sections of that need a little bit of work still. So that is still preliminary and in draft form. But what we would like to do with it is target a February introduction for that bill. Now, by way of reminder, the main features to this that I talked about at a conceptual level before, but that are now listed with legal language for an AO, this would make for 8 or more units of new multifamily construction, 15 years of property tax abatement on the buildings. Land remains taxable. So that in citywide, 15 years, 8 or more units of multifamily housing, has to meet certain kinds of requirements, has to be available for a 12-month lease. So it can't be seasonal rentals. We're trying to avoid those kinds of arrangements, and also that there is a bonus table to it that adds additional years of property tax abatement for a few different things. And so several of those are geographic focused. So you get there would be an additional 5 years of abatement if it's in downtown, midtown, the transit corridor, or in a deteriorated area. Which is a existing part of in statute that's under 1235, can be designated by ordinance a deteriorated area that meets certain standards. So of course, Chair Martinez sponsored a change to the transit corridor map for the property tax abatement under 1270. The idea for this ordinance is that it would incorporate that map. That map had lots of review and discussion, healthy amount of debate. The administration likes it a lot. So what we'd like to do is have that map be the transit corridor. So any of those would get 5 additional years of property tax abatement. There would also be 5 years of property tax abatement for meeting affordability requirements too. 20% of units being affordable at a threshold based on area median income. There's then an additional 3-year bonuses if it qualifies as mixed use. Which there's a definition for under Title 21. So property that qualifies as mixed use, if the abatement applies to the residential portions of the development, but you get some additional bonus for being mixed use as a format that we'd like to try to encourage as well. So a new one that was added that we've added to this too from the last time that I talked about it is that another 3-year bonus would be available if the work is performed by a certified labor union or that meets prevailing wage or apprenticeship utilization requirements. That's a bonus item as well of 3 years. So the idea with all of these bonuses is that we can revisit these and add more to them or change them as time goes by. The structure of the AO is to allow for a baseline incentive. We want housing across the board, but we're especially interested in housing in particular areas. And so we don't have it in there now, but down the road, this could also include something like a density threshold is something we've talked about. And there are other kinds of features to where we might want to encourage density or housing too, including a lot of the inspiration for what's in here already is of course in alignment with the title with the 2040 land use plan, but there are other pieces of that too, reinvestment focus areas that could be added, opportunity zones, at the federal level that are designated. These are all things that could be added into the bonus table down the line. So we think about this as something we can come back to, and revisit, and that assembly members can look at it that way as well. So a few changes from last time. What we had proposed before was that the abatement would terminate with the change of ownership, and we have removed that. But we do have it written to more explicitly require that it is renter occupied housing being built and not owner occupied housing being built. And the reason for that, not that we do want to encourage, owner occupied housing development, but it's a little bit, it's just a little bit harder. The owner of that property, the homeowner gets the abatement, and it isn't as clear how it incentivizes the new construction. So we're interested in ways in a different, maybe in a different ordinance down the line, how we can encourage things like condo development or other kinds of owner occupied housing development that's more accessible for entry level buyers. But this AO won't get there for that, but it is something we have an interest in pursuing down the line. We changed a few administrative pieces of it too. We're looking at how that this could be something that could be approved by the municipal assessor, but with an appeal to the CFO and to administrative hearing officer as approval. This is less of a some sections of some, like under 1235, there's more of a discretionary process for the awarding of abatement, and this one is a little bit more clear cut as far as like meeting these qualifications and then applying and then qualifying. So it doesn't have as much of a discretionary element to it. So we thought that having the assessor be able to make the call with an appeal to CFO made sense. So that was an approach that we took there. So again, I shared some draft language with the committee. There's a little bit. Still a little bit of work to be done. That the labor requirement piece is one that needs a little bit of that we're working on, kind of like the exact legal language that we want to use for that bonus table item, and then getting some maps and some definitions of all of the areas that qualify into it. But otherwise, we think that that this is very close, and we're excited to circulate this and ideally target an introduction within about a month. So I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee or anyone else.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Nolan. Very exciting stuff. I'll put myself in the queue after members, and we'll start off with Member Johnson.
Actually, I found the answer to my question.
What? Tell us what was it?
It was just my and when we went through mentioning the various bonuses that were available to extend the duration, I was curious if those stacked and if there was a limit to how far potentially a property could remain exempt. And it is explicit right in here. It's a maximum of 25 years. So that was the question. That's the answer.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for articulating that so we can capture it with you. Member Braun?
Yeah, I was curious. Nolan, you mentioned the federal opportunity zones. I guess I would say I guess I would encourage maybe we do include those if we can, but then I was curious because I've heard some talk that there's a lot of interest in that and kind of continuing to promote that. But also I was wondering, do we have a lot of those or if those were already designated, what parts of town that would be? And that doesn't have to be now, but maybe following up on the map. I just don't remember where they are.
Yeah. Can you broadly mention those, Nolan?
Yes, through the chair to Member Brawley. Federal opportunity zones. We do have some within Anchorage, and I don't have it in front of me now, but it does include areas that met lower income requirements. And so the Anchorage map has it. It's not. I think if if we at the municipality were designating areas that we thought were high need, we might come up with something a little bit different than the federal level because they had to limit the number that were available in each state. So it's not necessarily something that every area, that meets like a certain income level or whatever could qualify for. But that is something we could look at doing. I am hearing that there's going to be a revival of that in the new new presidential administration, and it may be something that is strategic to align with.
Okay, yeah, I would say, I mean, if our goal is to have more options than fewer, and if they are, as long as it's areas that we explicitly say we don't want to put growth, which I don't imagine that's the case, then I would put them in. That's my recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Broadway. Any other members with any questions? Any members online with any questions? Okay, if I don't hear any, text me if you do have a Zach.
Yeah, hey, Nolan. So, have you guys been engaging with any developers or anyone in the industry about, do they see utility in this? Is there interest in taking advantage of the program? I kind of asking because, we often look at these things, we like to imagine it's going to lead to lots of new construction, but, ultimately it's up to the developers to decide whether or not these things are of utility to them. So, any feedback on that?
Yeah, through the chair to Member Johnson, yes, absolutely. We have sought feedback from several developers of multifamily and had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of positive response to it. And so it's made us feel really good about the approach that we're taking. And I'm happy to share more with you down the line if you'd like. But yes, we've taken that pretty seriously. We're definitely want to make it a tool that gets used and that solves a need that we see out there.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Let me add on to that. I reserved some time for chatting in. Since we've been talking about transit supportive corridors and since introducing the idea of bringing out the tax from downtown to other areas, and Nolan working on it, I have personally received emails and have spoken with folks in the realm of several hundred units of apartments that people have eyes for in our community. And I was with a builder this week who described to me that they had been reached out to by someone who said, maybe we should start looking early on about these transit supportive corridors and there's tremendous opportunities. And so the interest is out there, and that's exciting. Thank you, Nolan, for also chiming in on that. And I can't wait to see the finished products, to see how, when the rubber meets the road. But getting the ball rolling, and I think in a thoughtful way with the map process, there's still a lot of work, just particularly with the transit supportive corridors. This is the tax layer on housing broader than transit supportive corridors, but as transit supportive corridors is really focused of mine. How we activate zoning in those areas is also something that we're working on actively. So these are really thoughtful processes that are going on, but the hey, we're open for business, let's start to drum up some economic activity. I think that message is getting out there. Thank you. Cool. Any other questions from members at this time? I think, Nolan, we really appreciate you coming. I think the February target is exceptional. I think you've done a lot of work. I know there are members, broadly myself and other members, you've been in touch with us, and we're looking forward to continuing to get this to the public and out onto the streets.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll move on to our next presentation, items of new business. MOA Planning Manufactured Home Community Feasibility Study, and I saw Mr. Ryan here, so come on forward and yeah, that's excellent. And feel free to just introduce yourselves for the record. Thank you.
Sure. Ryan Young, Long Range Planning.
I'm Katie Berry, McKinley Research Group.
Excellent.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just give a brief background to this project, and then I'm going to turn it over to Katie. But as the community is aware, there's several manufactured home communities throughout the municipality. Many of them are deteriorating. The condition of the units is beyond their useful life, and recent focus has been given the conditions noticed at the Forest Park mobile home community in Chautauqua River. What can the municipality do
And how do we better understand current market conditions, the existing conditions of these communities? What are the costs of replacing units? Sort of why have all these units which have been allowed to deteriorate without proper repair or replacement over the years? So the Assembly has allocated $50,000 for this manufactured home feasibility study that was done in first quarter budget revisions in 2023. We have secured leadership groups to do the work for us winter of 2023, and we kicked off the project in spring of 2024. It took approximately 6 months to complete the project, and we have the final draft on its way, being routed to the Assembly for your January 21st meeting with the AIM. And, Katie Berry here with the Cable Research Group to go over the key findings of the report.
Great. Well, thanks for that introduction. And in uncharacteristic fashion today, I know that you have a tight schedule, so I'm going to get right to the point. But lest I do that too quickly, there's plenty of preamble to go over. I do have one copy of the report here today. So what I'm going to share with you is about 10 minutes of information, but this document is packed with more numbers. Certainly, that's the crew I'm with. I have a clicker here. I'm going to give it one more time before Liza and we're just going to mind meld this morning. So thank you, Liza, for changing to the next slide. So as Ryan said, long-range planning contracted with our firm, McKinley Research Group, for this purpose. So amid Anchorage's housing price escalation and known concerns about manufactured housing, the long-range planning department contracted with us to look at the financial feasibility of developing a new manufactured housing community in Anchorage. And there's a few really important things to consider here. I want to be very clear about the financial feasibility. What you see in the next several slides is going to be based on, the dollars and cents of this. Certainly, there's other feasibility considerations that are packed into any new manufactured housing community, but today we're going to focus on the money aspect of it. And again, this financial feasibility really takes two lenses. This is not the lens necessarily of the municipality of Anchorage. The lens really is from a developer perspective. So if I'm a developer, at what sales price do I have to offer a new manufactured home in a new manufactured housing community for this to pencil out for me if I'm the developer? And then from a buyer perspective, does that sales price of a new manufactured home in a new manufactured housing community meet what I might consider affordability standards? And I'll kind of go through that a little bit as well. Thank you. So to remind everyone, what I wanted to show here a little bit today are some of the affordability housing thresholds for Anchorage. You caveat, this is based on 2023 data. As you all know, there's a data lag with anything, but in general, here's what you're looking at. Affordability of housing, as many of you probably know, is based on kind of a maximum monthly housing cost threshold of about 30%. So nationally, I see some reaction to that. I'm the egghead here to say that that's a standard that the nation uses for lots of federal guidance and others. I'm not saying that that's but what that means, and that is typically looked at through the lens of area-wide median income. So you can see here we have some various percentages of area-wide median income displayed on this left-hand column. In the next column, what that translates to is what is the annual household income? For example, if I am a family that makes 80% of area-wide median income in Anchorage, that translates to about $79,000. For my housing to be considered affordable per that national federal threshold, that means that my household would spend about $1,660 a month on housing costs. We've translated that roughly to what's kind of the maximum cost of an affordable home per those thresholds. You can see that on the right-hand side. So for a household making 80% of area-wide median income, we might typically think of an affordable home as a home that's priced at about $265,000. So just wanted to orient you all to this landscape again of affordable and what we're talking about here when we talk about affordability. And these numbers will come up again. Let's go to the next slide. I'd like to promise that that's the last big table of numbers you'll see, but it probably isn't. So as Ryan mentioned, there are a number of manufactured housing communities in Anchorage. What you will see in the report is that we have a snapshot of what the units kind of look like in financial space and what the communities look like. Basically, there's about 38 manufactured housing communities in Anchorage with 4,600 units. We've broken this into a couple different categories here of large and small manufactured housing communities because they differ in some significant ways.
Is this point of information, clarification?
Absolutely.
What do we mean by manufactured housing today? Are we talking about trailer parks? Or is it something else?
Ryan, why don't you?
Yeah, so, yes, we do recognize that at the end of this project that there are definitions in code like manufactured housing versus mobile home. And then there's also the common term modular housing. So we do recognize we need to clean up those definitions to clarify, because there is some confusion between the two. But when we are talking about manufactured housing communities, we are talking about trailer parks.
Mobile homes.
Mobile homes.
Essentially. Yeah. Okay. As we know them today.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
That makes more sense.
Yes, because we were like, what? Okay, but understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So hopefully that this information makes sense within that context. The basic point here is that for large manufactured housing communities, the average sales price over the last several years for an existing unit in an existing community is about $54,000. For a small community, so a manufactured housing community with fewer than 100 units, that average sales price has been about $41,000. So these units per this sales price meet the definition of affordable. Now there's some important caveats there as well. You can see that the average age of these units, both in large manufactured housing communities and in the small communities, is quite old. Unfortunately, I don't have a comparison today for you of how that compares to other housing in Anchorage. But it is quite old on its face. Are there any questions before?
I saw Member Johnson with a question and then Member Brown.
Yeah, I'm sure it's right, but I just kind of want to double check and point out it's pretty short. We see the average age, 58 years old. That means that for there's some that are newer, but there are also some that are older. The way that is the average. It seems pretty extraordinary. I don't imagine many structures were built with the expectation that they would live that long.
Many of these units were brought up during the pipeline, and it predates that. There was just such a demand for housing at that time that it's anything and anything you can get rid of somebody can live in, let's do it. And they have stuck around and people have been keeping them going. But they're well past their useful life.
Yeah, so if most of them were bought up in the pipeline, to keep the average number that low, that's also sort of saying that there hasn't been much since then, right? Or else we would have seen the average start to shift towards the smaller number, yeah.
That's correct.
Thank you. Member Brown?
Yeah, actually a couple of questions, and if this is on further slides, then we can skip to that. I think one, it'd be helpful to clarify the fact that, well, I'll just say it, HUD, there's a cutoff date for mobile homes that is 1975, 1976. So by definition, nothing is going to be
June of 76.
June of 76.
But
Okay,
these
so,
are on leased land.
so this
So
set of
you can have them
housing
anyway.
will not be newer than that. That's by definition. So that's important to understand. It's still right that they're old, their past useful life is an issue. But that's important to understand. My question is on the small mobile home communities. I'm actually surprised there's only 26, and I want to make sure And I'm saying this just because I live near a part of Spenard/Turnigan that has, like off McCray, Kona Lane, there's all these kind of little slices of one property that don't have the features of what you would call a community, but are still multiple mobile homes on one parcel. So I want to know if those were included, because 26 sounds low to me based on what I know just in my own neighborhood, and then extrapolating that to the rest of the city.
Well, thank you for that question, Member Brawley. I don't have a quick, easy yes, no for you right now. Well, you can get that.
I guess, does the report have a map? Maybe that's-
It does not.
Okay, so I think a map would be helpful.
And again, this information is meant to contextualize what you're going to see in the financial feasibility. So this is not meant as a catalog of your current state of play for mobile home communities, rather to kind of show, again, what these average prices look like and the age really of these units. But that's a great question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And then one other question or related to financial is, does the sale price, I assume, is the unit, what is the story with land rent?
That is also in the report, we can get there as well, but yes, this is the sale price of the unit itself.
So the building.
Absolutely.
I think you'll probably get to it. I was just gonna help answer Member Brawley's question. In June of '76 is really the cutoff, but it has to be on a permanent foundation, and a lot of these in the parks are not. You're paying space rent. So it's not gonna be a financeable unit either way.
These are all excellent points, thank you. So part of the question now is, again, if these units, and there are lots of HUD caveats, there are lots of caveats here by what we mean as a HUD affordable unit, a financeable unit. In general, the terminology we're using is, if I'm a buyer and I'm thinking about what's affordable to me, do I believe that that's affordable? Not necessarily how the federal government considers that and all of these other slices of it. This is really the buyer's perspective on, is this affordable, is this reasonable? So the question here that this document, this report addresses is, would a new manufactured housing unit in a newly developed community meet what a buyer or a developer would consider affordable or financially feasible to construct? If we can go to the next slide. Boy, I know you're tired of all my caveats, but here's one final page of that. So there's some key considerations here in Anchorage as we address this question. The first is that there are no longer any prefabricated home manufacturers that operate in Alaska. The last organization, the last company that was manufacturing these units closed in Anchorage in 2022. So one thing to really understand here about financial feasibility is that when we look at new units in a new community, we are talking about moving units up from the lower 48. Unless a new business starts in Alaska. But the presumption or the assumption in this report is that based on the current business landscape, these units would have to be moved up from the lower 48. There are some warranty considerations with that. Often a manufactured home, a manufacturer will offer a warranty on their units. As our team spoke with manufactured housing companies in the lower 48, they brought up these warranty considerations, that to sell units in Anchorage and to offer that same warranty may mean that when they need to do repairs, that means sending someone up to the state. That's not necessarily an attractive proposition if you're manufacturing homes in the lower 48. So it is not a guarantee that every manufactured housing business in the lower 48 is really lining up to sell here. Not saying it's, there are plenty that would, but there's some considerations there. I think we're all well aware of snow loads in Anchorage. You and my husband have probably shoveled your roof enough to know that that has to be a consideration with any manufactured home. There's some wind considerations. These require building standards that can actually withstand those wind and snow loads. So that also has a cost implication. I know that this group is all very aware of the Anchorage zoning restrictions of Title 21. Essentially, how this relates to financial feasibility is that there are also not necessarily ample lots in Anchorage that can be turned into a manufactured house. So there's a limit on how many of these plots of land can be, constructed into a new community. And there are some significant costs there for the infrastructure development, as you'll see, to create a new community up to the standard that Anchorage has set for itself in terms of landscaping, aesthetics, driveways, access, those type of things. That all adds some cost. Let's see. All right, now to the punchline, please, Liza. Okay, so what you're looking at here are estimates of per unit cost for development of a new manufactured housing community, and then the home sale price. And I'll, again, orient you a little more. What our team did is we looked at an example plot of land that would fit the zoning needed to develop a manufactured housing community. There are two different scenarios. One was a 20-unit community and one was a 40-unit community. What you can see here on this top row is that the unit cost of buying a manufactured housing unit, so going to the lower 48, handing the money over to the developer, that's $85,000 per new unit. We worked with shippers to understand what is the cost per unit of getting that manufactured home to Anchorage. That adds $20,000 for each unit. I mentioned site preparation costs, earthworks, utilities, getting surface infrastructure in. These are all based on Anchorage codes. Per unit, that adds $183,500 to a 20-unit manufactured housing community. So per unit, you're taking all of these site preparation costs. If you divide that by 20 units, that adds $183,000 of cost per unit. If you divide that same site preparation cost among 40 units, that's about $91,750 per unit for the site preparation. And I should also say that these numbers are heavily informed by our partners HDL. So these are real site preparation costs. These are not rules of thumb. These are truly looking at the example site selected and understanding what would need to happen for that site. So the bottom line here.
You want to jump in now, Steph?
Oh, no, whenever. Right, it's our practice.
Yeah, that is just fine. The bottom line, to develop these costs, the per unit cost, you're going to develop a manufactured housing community with 20 units. The per unit cost is $288,500. If you, per unit, develop a 40-unit manufactured housing community, the cost is $196,750. What you can see in that,
Just one clarifying question.
Absolutely.
What is the size of the units that we're talking about?
Oh,
Approximately.
Ryan,
You know.
we're gonna stall as we thumb through because I hate to say the wrong numbers. Oh, my Lord.
In the meantime, one additional caveat I'll put on site preparation costs is those are assumed under ideal conditions.
Yeah.
So.
Correct.
Right, if you've got topography, if you've got, site contamination, that's gonna add cost. So that site preparation cost, ideal condition.
Yeah, and it doesn't, you don't have to, if you have it, then that's great. It's a sense of what we talk about for manufactured.
Yeah. So this could be a mix of different unit sizes. Typically, what we were looking at here is an average of 2 to 3 bedroom homes with approximately 1,800 square feet. So that was what was predicated on this unit sales price.
Yeah, right on, thank you.
The final row that you're seeing here also assumes that there is some profit in this for developers. Again, if this is the developer perspective, you do not sell homes at cost. And so what you're looking at in the very bottom row there is about what the purchase price would look like to a buyer. So if you're going to be a buyer of a mobile home unit in a new community with 20 units, that price would be $331,000-ish. And if you're going to be a purchaser in a community with 40 units, that purchase price is about $226,000. I'm going to pause here for any other clarifying questions about these bottom line numbers.
Under the site preparation, if you break that down, there are things that are necessary. You have to level the lot, you need to have sewer and water. Are there things captured in there that perhaps current code requires that aren't really necessities, but maybe things that are more aesthetic in nature that are driving those costs up? Or is this just really like pretty much what it would cost? You stripped it down to sort of bare essentials.
So the perspective of this financial feasibility study is that everything that is set out in Anchorage's zoning is a necessity because the municipality has said this is what's necessary to do this. There are some aesthetic considerations in that zoning, but if it's in the code, it's a necessity. And utilities, I will kind of go out on a limb here and say, utilities do add considerably when you have to add these hookups for 20 units for 40 units. So at its very bare bones, utilities are a big consideration here. And Ryan, you can extemporize more on the aesthetics if you wish.
Yeah, the big one with the aesthetics would be, landscaping, site layout, like that. That would add to the aesthetic. But certainly just doubling down on the cost of utility installation. Just here, we're in a sub-market climate, utilities have to be very deep. And in order to do that safely, you need space. It takes a lot of time to do that resources. So.
Right on. We're gonna keep it moving right along, Member Brawley.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
And then I'll get back to you, Chair, Member Brawley.
Is this assuming a private utility system or is this assuming hookup to city utilities? Because I know that's one of the issues is these older communities have their own utility underground. So it's just to clarify, like, is this hooking up to AWU, excuse me, or is this putting in its own system?
This is hooking up to me.
Okay. And I don't know if there's a cost difference. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Chair Constant?
Yeah, I know we already had the discussion about the difference between manufactured homes and mobile homes, but I see in the slide that the word term mobile home has bled in. Is that intentional or just kind of something? Okay, so thanks.
Right on, thank you. And Member Littleton?
Just got a quick question. I see site preparation. Where in this slide are we incorporating the cost? This property area to put
this? Member Littlefield, you have provided a perfect segue. We can go to the next slide, then if that's okay.
Absolutely, as we have urgency to now continue to wrap this up.
Absolutely. So the basic answer, Member Littlefield, is that this manufactured housing financial feasibility study has a section all about land purchase. So what you saw on that last slide did not include any debt service on land purchase. So what you just saw is assuming that a piece of land is owned by a developer. That adds to the cost, and it adds considerably, as you know, as this group knows, to the financial feasibility from a developer's perspective. And what I'm going to go over here on this slide are some of the costs to a homeowner. So assuming that a buyer purchases one of these units and takes out a mortgage on that unit, what you're looking at in this top row is the monthly mortgage payment for these units. There's also a land lease component here. So what you're looking at are costs to a home, to a unit owner if they're going to occupy a unit in a manufactured housing community where the land is owned by the developer or by another business. So it's not a co-op model. There's some land lease here. There's also service fees, so you have to pay for your utilities, there are some property taxes on your unit, et cetera. The bottom line here is a couple things. So the monthly total cost for a homeowner of really occupying one of these units is higher than those thresholds I shared on the first slide. This is a pretty high cost, monthly cost for housing, and it doesn't really meet some of those affordability thresholds that I shared, or those area-wide median incomes, up to 150% of area-wide median income. Another key consideration is that this land lease amount of $800 per month is really on the high end of land lease for existing manufactured housing communities in Anchorage. However, what you'll see in this report when you have an opportunity to peruse it is that if a developer were to go out and purchase a new piece of land to develop this manufactured housing community, this land lease amount is not necessarily an attractive proposition to repay that debt. It would take quite a while for them to repay a loan to buy a piece of property with that. So while it's on the high side from a homeowner perspective side, it still do not necessarily meet the cost of purchase, or rather, it takes a long time to remake your money from purchasing that land. So let's move, there's one final kind of conclusion here that I'll share. New units in a new manufactured housing community are not likely to meet what we consider affordable housing cost threshold for low or middle income households in Anchorage due to all of these factors, not least of which are moving the units up in the lower 48 and significant site preparation costs. And with that, I hope that all of you will take an opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll just have a couple of final questions. Member Constant and then Member Braun.
Yeah, so I believe in Anchorage, we tax manufactured homes, mobile homes as personal property. The state law allows them to be taxed as real property, but by ordinance can be taxed as personal property. It could be that I misunderstand that, but I think that my understanding is correct. Has your team investigated at all the ramifications of the tax structure and the costs related that way?
No, that was not part of this feasibility study, although taxes are certainly in there. We have not looked at the differential tax burden from different policy considerations.
So I think that just for kind of a planning purposes, we might want to add some analysis through the tax assessor's office of why we regulate them the way that we do, and if there's a better way.
Constant, your question has been noted by the tax assessor. Right on. Thank you. Member Braun?
Hey, I was interested, you said 1,800 square feet, which like raised ties, having walked through these mobile home parks, I don't see any that are that large in my area of town. And I just looked, it said single wides are usually 480 square feet to 1,440 square feet. So I was curious as to why you chose that 1,800 square feet.
That was based on conversations with manufacturers in the lower 48 and the type of units that they were kind of recommending. And Ryan, you might also want to jump in here on, there are requirements on the lot sizes as well. So putting a smaller unit on essentially the same lot size may not make these any more attractive to a purchaser. Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the zoning restrictions that we're interested in amending is right now you need a minimum lot size of 2 acres to develop a mobile home community, and also the maximum density cannot exceed 8 units per acre. So since you're limited in the amount, a developer is limited in the amount of income that they can then get from rent or selling lots because there's a density maximum. We're looking at amending that order.
Can I follow up on that? So a park like Totem Trailer Park, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but to the east of Northway Mall, they're definitely denser than that. So they're probably grandfathered in to that density.
Yeah, that is one of the older communities in town. Predates even Old Town.
There may be additional questions. If they're not really burning at this time, I just want to move on because we do have other agenda items. There's one person, Member Brawley, you have a final comment on this?
Yeah, I guess, so what I'm hearing is that these communities, so putting a bunch of these in one place, whether or not it's one landowner or it's sold off, is not feasible. I just want to note, this is not talking about putting an individual unit on any other piece of land, right? I mean, it does talk about the affordability issue, but so we should separate the conversation of the community versus, for example, should we allow manufactured housing in more of our zones? So I just want to put that on the table.
Correct. This is about a new manufactured housing community with new units. And that's reflected really in those site development costs. That would be very different if you had a different piece of land in consideration.
Thanks. That's
Right on. No, great for the record. I appreciate the final point. Much more to learn about, much more to discuss. Really appreciate the work and thank you for being with us. We're going to continue to move. Most of the other agenda items are not too deep but they are more informational for us as a committee. And so we'll turn it over to Jack is with us, Gademis, for about the upcoming condo valuation changes for 2025. I asked him to come and just give us a description of what this is, if any members have questions, and this precedes tomorrow's work session on valuations in a broader context. So Jack, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So again.
Come a little closer, we can't hear you. Yeah, right on, we appreciate that.
So Jack Adamus, Municipal Assessor for the record. And so, yes, tomorrow I do have a presentation or work session with the Assembly, so I think that's tomorrow afternoon. But this is really just a very quick, high broad brushstroke of an update of one of our recent efforts. So first things first, we are, as in the assessor, required to assess at market value. And so this last year, we were looking at condos as a whole. Overall, we're needing to push condos up a little bit more than what the market is. We're playing catch up, but specifically it became evident there were certain pockets or certain condos where we were well below market value. And typically that's not really good news. Bad news doesn't really get better with age. And so one of the things that we try to do is be proactive. So we made an effort to reach out to these condo owners that the value is going up by more than 50%. About 380 letters as a whole. To put that in perspective, that's about 2% of the condo population. And so of that 380 letters, I think we sent them about, was it mid-December, about a month, 3 weeks ago now. And it's been pretty quiet. So as far as the update goes on that letter, and maybe just to give you a summary of what the letter was, basically just say, why is this happening? What to expect? Why was my property value not adjusted earlier? Just kind of explaining the background and their expectation of their options in the next coming weeks. So of those letters, we had about 10 folks follow up with us. So we were actually really surprised. We were expecting a lot more. I actually getting, a little nervous going, okay, well, what's our return rate on the mail, the USPS return rate? And it's about expected. I think it's like 4 or 5% return rate for delivery, which is kind of in line with what we have historically seen. So that's really about it. I think of the 10 that we received, there's a couple of folks that were absolutely very frustrated and empathetic of that. And I think some of the other folks just wanted to understand a little bit more. So really quick update.
Yeah, and we received any questions from members. The question I had originally is to better understand what you first started off with, which is to assess at market value and the reason for that. What does that mean? And are there other ways that it's done in that way? Is that just the standard way? And what does that mean to assess a market value? Because the question of raising the value 50% on an owner today seemed, I would have expected higher levels of frustration from responses as you expected.
Yeah.
Correct. So
Yeah, I would say, so what does assessed value, what does it mean to be assessing at market? Well, there's multiple ways to assess, right? There's like, for example, a lot of people will, there's like value in use as a technical term of like how much is the property worth to you? And you might buy it maybe above market value. An example might be the lot next to you is up for sale. You want to grab that. That's actually probably worth more to you as a utility than the market value, than what the market would bear. We don't really care about that. The state statute says market value. What does that mean? Well, the willing buyer and the willing seller are willing to, both knowledgeable, or what would that transact in the simplest terms? And so.
how do we know that? How do we know those things?
That's a very tough question, because at the end of the day, we are a non-disclosure state. Let me restate that. Non-disclosure state. What does that mean? That means this last year, we sent 8,000 letters to people saying, hey, congratulations on buying or selling your home. How much did you sell or buy it? And you know how many responses we got back? About 250-ish, maybe 260.
With real answers or with comments?
Real answers. Those are real answers. Those are what we thought.
How do you know they're really answering you?
We spend a lot of time looking at, so we.
The deed of trust is gonna say $10. I mean,
The deed of trust is gonna say $10, right? But a lot of times we get that and we say, okay, I see online that there's a list history on this. This list history says it was listed for $350, reduced to $340, and then it was pending at $340, and I see a market sale price or what they disclose at $335.
That's
probably a reasonable, credible thing, like, okay, I think that's.
So I want to add, I think your example was perfect. Scott, the way that they know it's true, they validate them with data, but those 200, I would bet a mass majority of them are the ones where the assessment is higher than the sale value. And so the people who are turning them in are turning them in because they have proof that their valuation, their purchase price was lower than what they're being taxed on. And so, I know that because I did it personally. I was being taxed higher than what I sold for. And so people aren't doing it for, oh, we want the public to know. They're doing it because there's a misalignment.
It's, through the chair to Constant, I would say thank you for your comment. I would say we certainly are often concerned about the bias of the data that we get. But at the end of the day too, you also have to make sure that we are able to have a value that's defensible too, right? And so.
And to be clear, this is because of the state statute.
Yes.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. If there are not any additional questions, we thank you for the presentation. Look forward to the work session tomorrow, and there may be some other bubble up questions that we have for you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. We'll move forward right along on our agenda, and we have a very quick informational for us from Francis McLaughlin about the AO 2025-3 amending Title 21.05.050, allowing food and beverage uses in connexes. Turn the floor over to Francis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Francis McLaughlin in the Planning Department. This is an ordinance that amends the zoning code to allow connexes to be used as food and beverage kiosks. These are these coffee huts that you see around town. Currently, connexes are prohibited as a structure to be used for these coffee huts, right? So this ordinance will bring the zoning code into parity with the health code, Title 16, and the building code, Title 23, which have allowed connexes to be used for this purpose since 2019. Planning thinks that this will bring the zoning code into alignment with the building code and health code, which is a benefit to everyone, the public, and us in the planning department that have to administer the code. This will help small businesses, and entrepreneurs have expressed an interest in using Connexus for this purpose. Planning, a little bit of history that Ms. Brawley asked about. Planning brought this forward in 2019. But it stopped after a planning and zoning commission hearing where the commission recommended denial because they didn't, they were concerned about how, essentially how Connexus might look and concerned about design. So the planning department has tried to address those concerns with some changes to the original ordinance, and that's what we're presenting to you. This is a relatively small amendment to code. It's just in one individual section. It doesn't span other sections. Be happy to answer questions. Yeah.
Member Brown?
Yeah, first I'll say that this seems common sense, and I appreciate this being brought forward. I guess my question is more and thanks for the background on this particular one. I guess I want to raise a bigger like maybe process question, and then something we can, follow up on later. So P&Z is, planning and zoning is supposed to be advisory to the assembly and also has a lot of other functions. So what you just said is basically something did not move forward because P&Z did not recommend it, but I didn't understand that to be kind of the normal process for code changes, right? So because planning and zoning is not meant to be the arbiter of what goes in the code, right? They weigh in as experts. So I just wonder, is that typical practice? Like, are there other ordinances that have never come to the assembly because planning and zoning did not recommend them? Or what is the process? I guess how much discretion is there to bring an ordinance beyond planning and zoning or not?
The track of this code change is not similar to anything else I think the assembly has ever seen. This is unique, and we should not think that this is something that has occurred in the past or that will occur in the future. Or this is just totally unique, and the circumstances around this, the situation, I've never seen before. I don't think that we'll see again. It's just not something to read into as how this works or shouldn't work, and it's not something to think about. It seems to me. The planning department brought forward this ordinance and then dropped it after the commission recommended denial. We now picked it back up and believe in it, and that's why we're bringing it to you, and we think that we've addressed their concerns. But we are looking for this relatively simple ordinance to be processed and adopted, this is the right timing for it, and not to spend more time and delay it any longer.
Okay. So it's really more the exception rather than.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, this, when I mentioned earlier that there might be other changes coming forward from things that the staff might be excited about, have brought to me. This is the only one that I've seen, the one that I know of, that did not continue to the assembly. Everything else. We just have.
And also acknowledge, starting in February, March 2020, the city was very busy with other things. So COVID, and then we had other challenges. So I also acknowledge like that this period of time was not a normal period of time for sure. So
thank you.
Member Brown?
Yeah, I had a question when I was reading through this the other day. I think it says that these need to be able to be moved in 24 hours. And, but then it also needs to have skirting or cribbing around, hiding. And I kind of wondered if you need to move them quickly, how much work will that require to add this extra screening to hide the bottom, and is that even necessary?
Well, we didn't, so what existed in the old code, in current code, and it's always existed for these coffee huts, food and beverage kiosks, they've always included that skirting around the trailer wheels. And I haven't built one myself. I don't know how much work it is, but yeah, the intent is that these are structures that are easily movable. And it was determined that I guess the connexes are also, quickly movable as well.
Okay.
Relative to a building on a foundation, sure. But relative to a mobile coffee hut, maybe not.
Yeah, we didn't propose or really even talk about removing certain requirements or design standards for these, but simply, this is really targeted at allowing connexes to function as them, because currently they're not allowed. It wasn't about other changes.
Gotcha.
But I think you raised a really good point, Karen, that those other minor details that would get in the way otherwise of a person taking advantage need to be addressed. I don't think they were dealing with that, but I think you were bringing this up to code with the ability to use it in the first place, which is about time, right? Like, we all feel that way. So thank you for doing this work and bringing it to us. Right on. If there are no additional questions on this item, I love it, and I look forward to pushing this through and as best as I can supporting this, and also doing the follow-up stuff to make sure that people can actually use these things and have more economic opportunity.
I haven't looked at the action agenda, but I think you guys moved this up to maybe February. Yeah, your first meeting in February. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, send us your questions if you have any others, because hopefully it would be a no-brainer at the meeting. That'd be nice.
Right on. Cool. Excellent. And the final agenda item, and then we'll open for any public discussion, but I'll also take a few minutes just to note for agenda item 5, I'll just highlight a couple of the legislative committee priorities. We'll start that discussion a little bit, and then I'll just open it up for members to invite you all to send me things so that we can have this discussion even at rules or et cetera. Cool. Member Brawley is going to do a final presentation, quick rapid fire on AO 2024-104S version, suspending multifamily design standards. Turn the floor over.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll be very brief. Thanks for making time at this meeting. And then first I'll say the intent is to pick this up and have a more substantive discussion at the next month's meeting. So I'm just giving information now and also want some feedback on a possible work session. So the short version is this ordinance sponsored by myself, Member Zalatel, pausing residential design standards for 3 years till 2028. So not deleting code, really just doing a pause. So what we're talking about is the rules about what your building can look like, site access rules, and it only applies to multifamily development. So just, that's the scope of it. It's not pausing the process. It's not pausing all zoning. It's not pausing building code. It really is that section of code. So just to be clear. It also, like I said, it doesn't pause the actual process, but we do anticipate that it could result in some time savings for people getting permitting approval to the extent that it can take longer when you have to do multiple iterations or complying with a part of the code. So, but this is really about suspending this one piece of code. I just want to highlight 2 upcoming opportunities. One I already said, which is the CEDC meeting next month, February 6th. I will have an actual presentation and we'll get into the discussion. Looking forward to questions. And then also just yesterday, I scheduled on January 22nd, this is Wednesday, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Zoom, working with the Federation of Community Councils. They're doing a new format called Local Lens. So it's really an opportunity to deep dive on a topic, have some presentation and discussion. It will be on Zoom only. It's not one of their regular meetings. So we've got that scheduled, and it should be fun because I'm going to be co-presenting with John Weddleton, former Assembly member. And we're going to talk about this ordinance, but really also the context of it, which is really kind of resurfacing the story of the Title 21 rewrite, because this was really the biggest product, I think, that came out of that change. So we want to, because I think there's been a lot of discussion about, people perceiving this as undoing that work. So we just want to get into that conversation. So John and I are going to do that, and should be a good time. So you'll see more information about that soon. And then it'll come back to the Assembly on the February 11th meeting. And then the question I have for members is whether folks want us to also schedule a work session on that. Because obviously this committee is a good place to talk about it, but not all members go. So just if anybody, yes, no, feel like you want it, we can get that scheduled before the
Member Johnson.
I guess I wouldn't turn down a work session. Okay. So I guess one quick question and then one maybe more substantive. It looks like in the S version, it would include some single family, so not just multifamily, but some single family from the design standard moratorium. I'm just looking at the AM.
Yeah, let me double check, because I think, like I said, there's multiple sections being suspended, so that might be the site access section, but that's a good question, I'll get back to you on that.
And then,
Section 1D, I think, you want to write down, section 1D, I think is where I'm confused.
Okay.
and then the other question is, we're talking about suspending them for a, definite period of time. It seems like the other track to potentially pursue would be to work with planning to actually clean up, site design standards, to figure out what do we actually want it to look like. I mean, was that considered as an alternative to sort of a temporary fix, something more permanent perhaps?
I think I'll channel my colleague and say it's a yes and. And I think one separate topic, but this site access process, we've been engaging with a work group and really kind of took the same tactic, which is pausing because these things were causing problems. And then the goal is to replace them. So I think we haven't talked about that in detail, but we've talked a little bit with planning. And I think there's definitely interest in looking at these. So the pause is not a fix in itself, but it would give opportunity to look at that. So, and also give opportunity to kind of see what folks do if they don't have all of those constraints on them, right? So, so yeah, I think it's definitely something we're considering. It's not captured in the ordinance itself. And I'll get back to you in a minute.
Thanks.
Excellent. No additional questions. We look forward to the more a thorough presentation and discussion at our next CDC meeting. And thank you for bringing this forward for us today. Just my quick note on the annual list of committee, legislative, and budget priorities. You should all, as members, should be expecting that I will be sending an updated list, which will identify what has been accomplished this last year. Some significant things have been accomplished, and we want to make sure we capture them. I've already sent some of this information as part of our updates with Ally and with our legislative team. But we'll be sending this out to folks and also asking for new things to be added to our workflow and to clarify some of those things that we may want to zone in a little more on. So just wanted to open that up to members. I will be reserving a little bit of time at our February meeting, so you have this time to think about what we've done and what you'd like to see added to our committee agenda. On that note, I'll turn it over for the last minute and just ask if there are any members of the public here who want to have any comments. I saw Mr. Robbins here earlier, and I know he was waving his hand about the manufactured home conversation, but he left and just wanted to identify that he may have had a question, and so to invite ACDA folks, if you have any information or questions about the manufactured home study and the work that we can do in the community around that topic, just please ping us and let us know. There are no additional questions or items. The last thing I will just flag is this weekend is we've engaged and we've funded support for the Music City Economy and that work with the Alaska Independent Music musicians. And this Saturday is a all-day music economy seminar and summit at the Nave. And it's going to be from approximately 10 to 3. And I'll be participating as a panelist as we talk about the expanding beyond the conversation of music economy, which we've had a little bit here, into really thinking of the relationship between hospitality industry and the nightlife economy. And this is additional research and work that I've been doing and bringing forward. So you should expect a little more fulsome discussion on that. Seeing no additional comments from members.
Real quickly, I would encourage everyone to drop off some blood on your way out, but especially if you have O-neg, there's a real shortage going on right now, so.
This is in response to about a blood drive poster on the wall, so that folks who are listening, who don't know the context of the room, do not think some vampirical things are happening in Anchorage. Right on. Thank you, Zach, for mentioning that. Mr. Sule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a chance to raise my hand there earlier, but just since we were on the subject of manufactured housing, it may be of interest to some of the members to know that we are looking at some amendments in our IRC updates to the manufactured housing appendix to allow smaller modular construction. So instead of having these things shipped up from lower 48, there are a couple of outfits in the valley that are very interested in fabricating these things. Basically, we would be tailoring this update to the appendix so that they would be in conformance with with the IRC and on non-permanent accommodations. And so those would be allowed in trailer parks as well. Would probably require some updates to the archive zoning, but that is something that we're looking at.
Very exciting. Thank you for that last note. And it reminds us that when you move one stone, you find a million more stones to move to be able to move successful policy forward. So thank you for identifying the complexity of things for us on the way out. And we'll adjourn at 10:30, everybody. Oh, you're not gonna-
Oh my gosh.
Change it. Because I want to.